Hey, welcome back. In this video, we'll explore the concept of margins and padding in web design. To begin, let's create two boxes by adding an div element with the ID of box 1 and box 2. Inside each box, we'll generate some dummy content using the lorem keyword. In our CSS document, let's style the first div. We'll give them a border of 5 pixels. The style will be solid, and the color black. A width and height of 300 pixels. And a font size of 25 pixels. At the end, set the background color, such as tomato, and change the color of the text to white. Now copy this code and paste it below for box 2. Just change the color for text 2. It may be green-yellow. Remove the color property. Now, let's focus on margins. Margins are used to create the space around an element. By default, there's a small margin from the left side. Remove this margin and make the boxes touch the sides of the viewport. We can set the margin of the body element to 0 pixels. Now these boxes are touching the size of the viewport. Margins are used to create the space around an element, but the margin is easily confused with padding. Next, let's briefly touch on padding. Padding is the space between the content and the border of an element. We can add padding to our boxes to see this space. Set padding to 40 pixels will create space between the content and the border of 40 pixels. The padding property applies a padding of 40 pixels to all sides of the box. If we have the specific requirement of applying different padding values to all sides, for the top side, we can use the padding top property and set it to 40 pixels. For the right side, we can use the padding right property and set it to 70 pixels. Similarly, for the bottom side, we can use the padding bottom property and set it to 30 pixels. And for the left side, we can use the padding left property and set it to 90 pixels. Here's another tip: if you need to set different padding values for each side of an element, you can achieve this by using a single line of code with 4 values. Let's comment this code. Padding 40 px, 70 px, 30 px, 90 px. In this format, the first value corresponds to the top padding, the second to the right padding, the third to the bottom padding, and the fourth value corresponds to the left padding. Now comment this line of code to move further. We can also set margins for specific sides of an element. For example, we can set a top margin of 60 pixels for one of the boxes, which will push down any elements below it. The same applies to the left and bottom margins. However, since there's nothing to the right of the box, the right margin won't have any effect. To apply the same margin to all sides of an element, we can use the shorthand notation. For instance, setting margin 60 px will apply a 60 pixel margin to all sides. This will apply a 60 pixel margin to all sides of the element. In CSS, it is important to mention that you can set negative values for margins as well. This allows you to adjust the spacing around elements in a flexible manner. But you cannot use negative values for padding. Here's another tip: if you need to set different margin values for each side of an element, you can achieve this by using a single line of code with 4 values. Margin 30 px, 50 px, 70 px, 100 px. Let's change the last value, it may be 200 pixels. In this format, it will work the same as padding. The first value corresponds to the top margin, the second value to the right margin, the third value to the bottom margin, and the fourth value to the left margin. By specifying these values in the specified order, you can easily set different margin values for each side of the element. You can use percentages instead of pixels for margins. Set margin left to 40%. This margin will use up as much space as 40% width of our window. Here's a handy trick: if you want an element to stick to the right-hand side of your window, you can set the margin to auto. This will automatically calculate the margin on the left-hand side, pushing the element to the right. This entire space will be considered as a margin. Similarly, you can achieve the same effect by using margin right, auto, which will make the element stick to the left-hand side. Here's a neat trick: if you set both margin left and margin right to auto, the element will stay horizontally centered in the middle of your document. This means the margins on the left and right will automatically adjust to evenly distribute the space and keep the element centered. It's a simple way to achieve a balanced and centered layout. That was a brief overview of margins and padding. Margin properties are responsible for defining the space around an element. It's important to remember that padding specifically refers to the space between the content and the border of the element. If you found this video helpful, please like, comment, and subscribe to our channel. Thanks for watching, and see you in the next video. Don't forget to leave any questions or suggestions in the comments below.